Israel has announced that its ground forces were expanding their activity in the Gaza Strip. Israeli defense forces are inching closer to a full-blown ground invasion of the Gaza Strip. The Israeli army spokesperson said overnight air attacks hit Hamas tunnels as well as other targets. Earlier, Israel's defense minister also said the country expected to launch a long and difficult ground invasion of the Gaza Strip. And now, the IDF spokesperson says that the ground forces were extending their operations across the border.
בשעות האחרונות הגברנו את התקיפות בעזה. חיל האוויר תוקף באופן נרחב מטרות תת-קרקע ותשתיות טרור, באופן משמעותי מאוד. בהמשך לפעילות ההתקפית שביצענו בימים האחרונים, כוחות היבשה מרחיבים את הפעילות הקרקעית הערב.
Meanwhile, multiple explosions were witnessed in Gaza after the Israeli military's announcement. Several rockets were also fired from Gaza City into Israel prior to the Israeli strikes. Early last night, communication services in the Gaza Strip went dark. Two major Palestinian mobile networks, Jawal and Paltel, confirmed that their phone lines and internet services have been cut off. Multiple United Nations agencies as well as the Palestine Red Crescent have issued statements saying that they have completely lost contact with their teams in the Gaza Strip following the communications blockade. Retired Colonel David B. Desroches is professor at Near East South Asia Center for Strategic Studies, National Defense University. He's now joining us live from Washington, D.C. Good evening, Colonel David, and welcome to the show. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Rick.
Now, there's a lot of uncertainty over what the current Israeli military plan is and whether the expansion of ground operations indicates a full ground invasion. The airstrikes are intensifying in Gaza. Is this ground invasion, in your opinion, highly likely?
Well, it's likely, but I don't think it's likely today. I think that what you're seeing is an attempt to basically what we call shaping the battlefield. I think that Israel is seeking to trick Hamas's ability to reinforce different positions, their ability to shift forces among different locations. The aim of Israel, and they're probably also observing how Hamas reacts to a ground incursion, so they'll know what to expect. Their aim is to ensure that when they go in, which I don't think will be today, and I don't think it'll be within the next few days, but when they do go in, they want to know exactly what to expect. They want to know that they can isolate whatever it is they're attacking, prevent it from being reinforced so that they can destroy it and then move on to something else.
Colonel, what is likely to happen if Israel proceeds with their full ground invasion and Palestinians who are urged to move southwards do not manage to relocate?
Well, you know, what we've seen in the past, if you're Hamas, you're fighting an enemy that has total air superiority, has a really good intelligence network, has the ability to observe you almost continually. So how do you conceal your assets or protect your assets? There's really only two ways. You either put it underground or you put it in a place that Israel is not willing to fire at or cannot fire at without, you know, including significant cost. And that means generally close to a protected facility or close to a population center. So I think part of the Hamas plan is that they don't want civilians to move out. They want to ensure that they can win a strategic victory, even if they have a tactical loss, by forcing Israel to operate in areas with a large amount of civilians, which will inevitably lead to Israel killing a large amount of civilians. That is a strategic victory for Hamas, as we've already seen.
Colonel David, what's your opinion about what's going on at the United Nations General Assembly? Because we've seen they've voted for a non-binding resolution, which Canada, India, Iran are some of the countries that abstained from this vote. 120 votes in favor of this resolution. What do you think about that?
I think that there's a reflexive dislike of war, and I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, there is a lot of suffering. There's going to be a lot of suffering. But I think that, at least in Israel, and I think the thinking behind the U.S. is that to have a ceasefire right now would basically be to enable Hamas to continue attacks targeted at civilians. I mean, we forget this now, but Israel can at least plausibly argue that the damage they've inflicted is incidental to hitting military targets that are located among civilian populations. But the Hamas raids were targeted at civilians. And I think that the United States and Israel are of the view that that cannot be allowed to be normalized. So, it's going to be contentious and people are going to argue over it for a long time. But my guess is that's the thinking.
Colonel David, finally, people are, associating what is happening now to what happened in 2014. But they're saying that in 2014, the war was not allowed to extend. What is making this war proceed this time, and who can be the likely mediator?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think the thing that most people are looking out on, this is a remarkable attack. The most logical comparison is with the 73 war, where the Israelis were again caught unprepared and caught by surprise. But the 73 war was primarily carried out against soldiers, against the Israeli army along the Suez Canal in Egypt, and against the Israeli army along the Golan Heights in Syria. This was an attack primarily carried out and targeted deliberately at civilians within the 1947 borders of Israel. And so what you have here is not just an attack against military assets, which, arguably is not as bad as an attack against civilians. So I think what we're going to see, unfortunately, is that Israel cannot allow this to become normalized. They have to restore deterrence. And the only way to do that is by making Hamas pay a very heavy price or wiping out Hamas. And given that Hamas is located and diffused among one of the most densely populated places on earth, you can't do that without inflicting a lot of civilian casualties. That's the unfortunate truth of it, I'm afraid. I wish I had better news for you.
All right, I've been talking to retired Colonel David B. Desroches. Colonel, thank you very much for all your inputs and for talking to us today.
It's an honor.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.